Welcome to another adventure in aviation. Today you're going to see a twin Mustang. That's two P-51 Mustangs joined together side by side. Hi everybody, this is Captain Fred, your host for Aviation Theater and a proud member of the San Diego Aerospace Museum, the first place to visit when you come to San Diego. We have a good program for you today, and we'll get started right after this important message. Welcome once again to Captain Fred's Aviation Theater. Today we're visiting with Bill Cusack, and he's going to tell us about the twin Mustang. Bill, the Mustang was a wonderful airplane. A lot of people don't even know that there was actually a twin.
Correct. It's a little known aircraft. It often gets confused with the P-38 and the P-61. It's kind of lost as far as its brethren go as popularity. It kind of came in late in World War II, so there's really not much known about it until the beginning part of Korea, where it did see some extensive action in Korea.
Let's start with the family history.
Okay.
At the beginning of World War II, the RAF ordered some Curtiss P-40s from Curtiss,
Right.
and they were up to their armpits. They couldn't build them. So the RAF went to North American and asked them if they would build Curtiss P-40s. Now, North American wasn't really excited about building Curtiss P-40s.
Right.
So they suggested that they build a new airplane for the RAF. And since they had built the AT-6 or the SNJ for the RAF, and the RAF liked their work, they said, okay. Can you tell our viewers what happened with the creation of the Mustang?
Well, with the creation of the Mustang, you had a beautiful fighter that wound up being the mainstay of the U.S. fleet for fighter protection.
I was talking about the calendar.
I'm sorry?
North American said it would take them 120 days to gear up to produce the Curtiss P-40. And in that 120 days, they could do the impossible. They could create and build a new airplane.
Right. Practically going from drawing board to production with flight and actually being airborne within 120 days.
And they did it in 102 days. They finished the Mustang. Right. The best airplane in the world.
Exactly.
It was kind of a composite of all the good parts of the airplane, and it became the best airplane in the world in World War II.
Exactly. Well, it was also used with the design features that pilots input. It's one of the first aircraft that a lot of pilots had an input on how it should be designed and how it should be built.
And one was the creation of the bubble canopy.
Correct, for vision.
The first canopies were straight, like the Curtiss P-40, and then they added the bubble canopy. Now, the original Mustang, the British called the castrated Mustang.
True.
Because it had the Allison engine in it. Would you tell our viewers about that?
The Allison engine, unfortunately, never really lived up to the Rolls-Royce Merlin as far as input and output goes. Also, lack of superchargers and parts and pieces at that time.
And it had a radiator.
Right, exactly.
So it could be brought down by one soldier with a rifle.
Right. It also, too, had the tendency to be known as the Allison time bomb, which also the P-82 wound up experiencing problems with as well, was you didn't know when it was going to quit. Spark plugs would foul up usually after one flight, in which case you'd have to take the plugs out and replace them after every go. So it was kind of a hard engine to work with.
Well, starting with the D model, they put the bubble canopy,
bomb racks, and the Merlin Rolls-Royce engine, and you take it from there.
Well, 51 is really not my mainstay.
Well,
as far as
they became a high altitude, long range fighter, which was used as a bomber escort.
Correct.
And Hermann Goering later testified at the Nuremberg trials that when he saw the Mustangs flying over Berlin, escorting the B-17s, that he knew that Germany had lost the war. Now, with the Merlin Rolls-Royce engine, the Mustang could do 440 miles an hour. So they figured, well, if one Mustang is good, two Mustangs are better.
Exactly.
So tell our viewers what happened.
Well, from there, the design concept, North American having great success with the P-51, like you said, figured one Mustang is good, two is going to be even better. So they came up with a design known as the P-82, which in essence looked like two P-51s joined together with a single wing.
P-82.
Correct, P-82. Okay. Later designated as an F-82 when the Air Force came out of the U.S. Army Air Corps.
It changed from pursuit to fighter.
Correct.
Right. But the P-82 was a designation for the twin.
Correct.
Now the twin had two 1,250 horsepower Rolls-Royce engines?
Correct. It started out with Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, and the first 20 airplanes built under the B designation at the end of World War II had the Rolls-Royce Merlins in them. After the war, we refused, or we didn't want to keep paying a $6,000 tab to England for the rights for the Rolls-Royce Merlin, so we switched over to the Allison engines. And as we just previously discussed, the Allison engines were not very well thought of, as well as being performance at a minimum.
Now with the Merlin, this airplane did 475 miles an hour.
Correct.
Which probably made it the fastest plane in the world at that time.
Exactly. It was faster than the P-38, and it was faster than the P-61, and it was even faster than our early jets that came off the production line.
Our early jets.
Our early jets, correct.
Because our early jets had straight wings.
Correct, yeah.
The Germans started out with the slant wings, or the angled wings, but for the first three jets that we flew actually had straight wings like a regular airplane. Right. Did they see action in World War II?
The P-82s did not see action in World War II. They came off the production line late June 1945. By that point in time, the need for the P-82...
Germany had already surrendered. They surrendered May 6th.
Right, and then you had the island hopping campaign that really didn't become a reality. We were already with the Manhattan Project getting ready to drop the atomic bomb. The invasions that we thought were going to happen wound up not happening. The long-range bomber escorts that were required didn't come to fruition.
Well, they had planned on this P-82 being a high-altitude, long-range bomber escort for the B-29s to bomb the home islands of Japan.
Exactly.
That was the plan.
Right. We were sending up bombers over Japan doing firebombing raids, and they were precariously unprotected, just as it was in Europe. The Pacific Theater, being a longer flight requirements, needed an aircraft that could keep up with the B-29 and escort it all the way to the mission and back.
This was capable of a 2,200-mile flight with the, I guess both fuselages were gas tanks?
You had fuselage tanks, you had wing tanks, you had external tanks, so the aircraft could keep up with the B-29 round trip 2,500 miles.
Very good. We'll continue right after we come back from this very important message. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Captain Fred's Aviation Theater. Today we're learning about the P-82 twin Mustang. Now, they did see action in Korea.
Correct.
Would you tell our viewers about that?
Sure. The first three MiGs shot down in Korea were by P-82s.
MiGs were jet airplanes.
Right. And actually these were designated MiGs, but they were actually Yaks, which were propeller-driven.
But they're jet, they were
propeller-driven.
Oh, tell us about that.
The first three attacks, or I should say the successful kills of the P-82 were against the Russian-made Yak fighters, which at that time were still propeller-driven.
But they were made by MiG or designated as
designated
MiG?
as a MiG, right.
I know that the first probably 4 months in Korea, the United States ruled the skies.
Right.
And then something called the MiG came out, and we couldn't believe that the Russians were so advanced.
Exactly.
Because the Corsairs and all of our propeller airplanes just ruled the skies until that MiG appeared. How did this airplane perform or cope with the MiG?
Did very well. Actually, the early jets really were not that capable, or it did not really come out with a great speed to it in the beginning. When the war broke out, the P-82s were the only ones that could actually operate for long periods of times over Korea in airspace.
That's June 20th, 1950.
Correct.
Is when it started.
Right.
Until June 1953. So it was 3 years that we were in Korea. And was this airplane there the whole time?
Yes, it was. As it started out with, like I said, it was the only aircraft that could sustain long flights over Korea. The first 3 MiGs or /Yaks were shot down by the P-82. What happened is as we built up on our jets and as we started to get land bases close enough for our operational jet aircraft, the P-82 was then redesignated as far as its role went. It went into strafing missions and proceeded to chew up a lot of MiGs on the ground before they had a chance to get in the air.
Okay, tell us how this thing works. You have 2 pilot's seats or 2 canopies. I assume the pilot in command sits on the left.
Right.
And the person on the right is not a pilot.
Well, in the early P-82B models, the original design was 2 pilots. This aircraft being a B model, both sides are dual controlled. You had pilots on both sides. Later variants, they took the pilot out of the right-hand side and put in the early navigator / warfare operator.
Radar operator, radio man, navigator.
Correct, correct. That wound up being your right seat.
Having 2 pilots in an airplane creates a problem. When my wife and I fly, you got 2 pilots in command. So we've made a decision that whoever's in the left seat is the pilot in command of the aircraft. Exactly. And the person in the right seat is cargo. So to prevent that problem, the pilot sat in the left, and then you had radio operator, navigator, radar operator, / whatever else
on the right side. Right.
So it had 1 pilot in command.
Yes. It was always the guy in the left seat was the pilot in command, the PIC, and the gentleman on the right-hand side was your either radar intercept officer or, like I said in the early variants, the relief pilot, but not the PIC, not the pilot.
Now, the wings were full of gasoline?
Correct. You had wings full of gasoline. You also had the center section that was full of gasoline. You also had the ability to put...
The center wing
is full of gasoline as well. That's got a fuel bladder in it as well. Fuel external drop tanks, so you could
drop
carry,
tanks too.
You could put a good 3,000 pounds of fuel on this aircraft. As a matter of fact, Colonel Robert Thacker flew from Hawaii to New York back in February 1947, the longest unrefueled nonstop flight from Hawaii in time, distance, and speed in a P-82B.
From Hawaii to
New York. In
New York City? Is that right?
Yep, nonstop.
From Hawaii, across the Pacific Ocean, over Los Angeles, over Denver, over St. Louis, over Cincinnati, all the way to New York City in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yep.
Wow.
Unrefueled, and like I said, it was it did it in 14 hours, 17 minutes, I believe.
Well, not only is the distance remarkable, but the speed that he did it in also is remarkable.
Yep. And that's one of the records that still stands today.
And then after Korea, was it retired because we got jets?
Actually, it fell into a flight test phase. Anything and everything that the Air Force seemed to want to test, they used the F-82, now in the Air Force F designation. They used it as the test bed. Colonel Bud Anderson used it for cold weather flights up in Alaska. She was used for external drop tanks, external missiles, rockets, cannon fire, anything that the aircraft could carry was tested on the later variants of the F-82. So she saw a good 10 or 15 years in a flight test role, high altitude, things like that.
Very good. When we come back, we're going to find out how they got their hands on this particular twin Mustang. We'll be right back. back to Captain Fred's Aviation Theater. Now, the twin Mustang, after Korea, they performed in air shows, they did a variety of things. This particular one was involved in an accident and sat gathering dust. Tell our viewers how you got it and got it here.
All right. The aircraft was assigned to us by the CAF for restoration. We submitted a request that we would like to take the aircraft over and restore it back to flying condition. Part of the problem was getting it out of Midland, Texas, and getting it to a place where we could restore it. We approached Congressman Randall Duke Cunningham.
That's Randy Cunningham, Vietnam ace, Top Gun instructor, and United States Congressman.
He went and interceded on our behalf to the Pentagon, to the Joint Chiefs, Chief of Staff for the Air Force, and on our request submitted our proposal to have the Air Force airlift the aircraft from Midland, Texas, here to Gillespie Field. We submitted our proposals. They worked it out with the Joint Chiefs, the Air Mobility Command, and Miramar, Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, for landing rights to be able to bring the aircraft in. We disassembled the aircraft to take off the outboard wing so it would sit in the C-5. We loaded it on the C-5, brought it over to Miramar, and then with the help of Marty Davis of Eagle Promotions,
so it was delivered in a C-5A.
Yes.
To Miramar.
To Miramar, right. Marty had secured for us ground transportation through Brewer Crane Company to be able to lift it, Fletcher Towing to be able to tow it on the aircraft.
Just getting it from Miramar here was a job.
It was an enormous job. They required the efforts of course, the California Highway Patrol, an oversized truck, because it is an oversized load. It's 18 feet wide. We had to get permits. We had to make sure we were going at proper times, speed, designated roadways, had people watching on corners that we weren't taking off shoulders or, get off the road or not have a mishap.
And then finally you got it here.
We got it here at Gillespie Field.
The CAF headquarters at Gillespie Field in El Cajon.
Right. World War II Flying Museum here at Air Group 1.
Okay. Tell our viewers when and how you got into aviation.
The proverbial little kid. Dad took me out to an air show, and I proceeded to watch the planes and ask for them to come back. From there, studied hard, worked hard, and went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott, Arizona. Got my private pilot's license. Currently hold only about 175 hours, and trying to get current enough to be able to fly the right seat in the P-82.
So you plan on restoring this airplane to flight status?
Correct.
And you'll be flying it at air shows?
I hope to, yes. Hope to be certified in the right seat.
Now, if people want to help, can they come out and turn a screwdriver or
they can
help
turn
in some way?
a screwdriver, they can push a broom, they can help us in all sorts of administrative tasks. There's more things to do than just working on the aircraft.
They could donate their labor, not necessarily money.
Exactly. Not necessarily money. Time is more valuable than money, when you're trying to do a restoration this size.
When they restore airplanes over at the Aerospace Museum, they say they could not afford to pay what it costs if they didn't have the volunteers.
Exactly.
It'd cost $5 million to restore an airplane, so you have to depend on volunteers.
Exactly. We feel it's going to take about $500,000 to get this aircraft back in the air, and that's with the use of volunteer labor. If we had to pay for every nut, bolt, time, wrench turner to put the aircraft back in the air, you're looking at an excess of $1 million.
Well, maybe somebody will come out and help you.
Hope so.
Maybe this show will help.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
As always, this is Captain Fred saying, I love airplanes and I honor the people who fly them. And today, we've been visiting with the twin Mustang.
Well, that's our show for today. We hope you enjoyed it. We certainly enjoyed bringing it to you. Until next week, this is Captain Fred saying, God bless America and happy landings!